right, a new set dropped. We've got the Eldraine cards, Throne of Eldraine, I think they are. Anyway, ELD is the set initials. So there are some cards that I've tried that they're on my radar for possibly being good for Commander, and they probably will be in decks where they fit that don't have better cards competing for the slot. And isn't that always the way it is? And it's really hard to tell sometimes how good a card is, especially when you're juggling, you're weighing what to put in and what to pull out. So there were about 6 or 7 cards, honestly, from the set that looked like they had potential. And as of right now, I'll show you the ones that I've settled on, as well as one I missed from M20 that I'm trying out and so far pretty happy with, although I do admit it isn't a perfect card. It has some potential drawbacks, so I'll have to kind of see how that goes. So I want to talk about the ELD cards first, the Throne of Eldraine cards first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come down here and I'm going to do foils and non-foils, and I'm going to filter for Throne of Eldraine. And it looks like, oh, we're going to take out this. I'm already giving one away. All right, and then we're going to go to quantity 1 because I have the ones that I mostly am interested in. Here's the list of cards that I so far took an interest to, plus minus 1 card that I'll talk about in a minute. The first card was Dance of the Manse. This card, return up to X target artifact or non-aura enchantment, so you can't get Treachery, but you can get everything else in the deck, which is Necropotence and, well, basically Necropotence and Copy Artifact is, I think, it. So you can return those, which is pretty darn good, but also artifacts, so all the good stuff. With converted mana cost X or less, and then if it's 6 or more, the permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types, which is really weird. If you did it for 6, you could have like a Necropotence that's a 4/4, and it might be fun to like actually turn the skull sideways and attack people with it, but yeah, anyway, it's kind of silly too. It's generally not going to be 6 or more because what that means is you dumped 8 mana into the spell. That's not why you play it anyway. The idea though is that you could use it as sort of a mini Yawgmoth's Will, one that you can muddle the mixture for, and you could, because you can transmute to go get it. And so you could potentially have a game where your opponent's killed, like they've dealt with your Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, maybe you've sacked an Expedition map, that kind of stuff, and then you can just spring them back into play for very cheap. I think that has a lot of potential, and I suppose in a format where there's a lot of that going on, it may be worthwhile, but for now I am not using the card. I do think it should be on your radar though, so that's why I bring it up. The problem is that it's kind of fighting right now with Brought Back for that kind of secondary recursion slot. Snapcaster Mage and Yawgmoth's Will. Will is never getting cut. Snapcaster Mage, it's just not getting cut. And then Brought Back, I don't think it's getting cut. So the problem is Brought Back is just so good for, it's so good for being so compact. I mean, it returns 2 things for 2 mana at instant speed. This would take 4 mana at sorcery speed for 2 things, and Brought Back does not care about casting costs. So you can have games where your opponent attacks and kills your Jace, you crack a fetch land at the end of their turn, you play Brought Back, you get back a Jace and a land, and you're actually up a card. And it's just incredibly potent. When you compare that to Dance of the Manse, it just doesn't really compare. So for now, it would have to be something where you do in addition to the others, and I'm not sure that it makes the cut because the deck list is just too compact right now. But if you do face a high removal environment, then you might want to take a look at that. So the next card is Drown in the Loch. So Drown in the Loch is an instant that counters a spell. It's a hard counter for 2 mana, which is awesome. Or destroy a creature for 2 mana. So this card seems completely insane, like a souped up counter spell. However, it has a drawback. And the drawback is one that I didn't think was going to be an issue at all. However, I was thinking about it backwards. So the drawback is that the card you counter or the creature you kill has to have a converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyard. So that means if you want to counter or kill, say, a Dark Confidant, your opponent has to have at least 2 cards in their graveyard for you to kill that. Or if you want to counter their counterspell, they have to already have 2 cards in their graveyard for you to counter it. Now against a deck like this, where it's 10 fetch lands plus and a bunch of cantrips and stuff, that's going to be no problem. But when I originally read the card, I thought that I had read it as the number of cards in your graveyard, which is super easy to attain. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is just going to be absolutely mandatory for this deck. Easy pickings. 100% going to play it. Not so much though. You can get in these games where you really aren't killing a lot of their stuff, and they're doing things like ramping up, and they sit there and play like, say, they go first turn Mana Elf, second turn Priest of Titania or something. Your second turn, you're looking at Drown in the Loch and a Priest of Titania, and you can't drown it in the Loch because they don't have any cards in their graveyard yet. And now you've got a card that's just frustrating you. And that right there, or the fact that they can go first turn Soul Ring, you go land, they go land Soul Ring, and then you go land and you're looking at Drown in the Loch wanting to kill this thing, but if they didn't play it off a fetch land or something, you can't. And that, I think, means that the card does not belong in Breya, but it may belong in decks where you need, you have, like, for example, hardcore just blue-black decks, where this card will just be an excellent card for the mid-game. It is not an early-game card, but when you fill out your early-game counters and you want a mid-game card that's cheap and powerful, then Drown in the Loch is really good. Mana Leak, for example, is an early-game counter that's also good in the mid-game, but typically falls off in the late game, typically, right? Drown in the Loch, on the other hand, is a card that gets really good in the mid-game and late game, but it's not a very good early-game card. We want to focus on the early game because that's, if you get to the mid or late game, you should win. You're favored to win. So this card doesn't make the cut, but it should be on your radar as well because, it's an incredibly flexible card, and it is a 2-mana hard counter when it works. And anything that's a 2-mana hard counter is always a card that you want to be looking at as a potential card to be playing. The next card is Wishclaw Talisman. You see I was able to find, I've been trying really hard to find foils of the cards that I'm actually using. I was able to find a foil Wishclaw Talisman after I searched about, a dozen bots. But anyway, this thing is much better than I threw it in here as a test, the regular version, and holy smokes, this card is way better than I gave it credit for, way better than I realized. It's a 2-mana artifact, so you can already do some really cool stuff like tutor it out with Tezzeret, which means you now have like Fabricate, can now fabricate into Wishclaw, or Tezzeret into Wishclaw is now a chain that will allow you to tutor up any card in your deck. So you're getting your butt kicked and you top deck Fabricate and you're like, oh, I need a Toxic Deluge. Well, provided you have the mana, maybe it'll have to be over the course of 2 turns, but you could Fabricate into a Talisman and Talisman into a Deluge. That's amazing, right? Even though on the opponent's turn, so here's the thing, it gets 3 counters, you use it and remove a counter, and then you give it to your opponent. Then they can use it and remove a counter, which is a Demonic Tutor, for 1 mana, and then they have to give it back to you, and then you get a 3rd use. So right there, you're getting 2 Demonic Tutors and they get 1. And if you notice that this is a toolbox deck, and so quite often the cards that you're going to get, like for example, you Wishclaw for a Toxic Deluge and clear the board, now they tutor and all you need is 1 counter to stop that, and then you can tutor again, and they get it back after you've tutored the 3rd time, but there are no more counters on it, so they can't use it again. And so at that point, you then just go get the card that wins the game. Or let's say you search for a card like Deluge to sweep the board. I use Deluge because it's just a kind of obvious example, like a emergency card, right? Or Vandal Blast or Mind Twist or something really powerful. Let's say you go get Necropotence or whatever. So you go get a card like that, and then you get so much value out of the card that quite often the thing they're going to do is just roll out another threat or destroy your threat, but by then it's too late. It's already done its damage. Like if you go get Necropotence and you Necro for 6, and then your opponent uses their Wishclaw effect to kill your Necro, assuming they can push it through your counter magic, who cares, right? Like they just killed your Necro and now you get your draw phase back after drawing 6, plus you've got a Demonic Tutor waiting for you once more. But it's particularly good, having said all that, it's particularly good in Breya for a number of reasons. So first of all, there is a trap you can set up. So the trap with Wishclaw is that you use the Wishclaw Talisman, and the card you go get is Mana Drain. So you wish for Mana Drain. Then you let them have their turn. They will, generally speaking, wish for their best card, which will be the card that allows them to do the most damage while spending the most mana, right? And because it's a demonic tutor, they're going to be able to get the perfect card for the scenario. Of course, in this scenario, what's happened is they're just going to run it right into your mana drain. So you set them up, you wish for your drain, they wish for the best card, the most expensive card they can play, run it into your mana drain, and then on your turn you get your real demonic tutor, the last one for that card, and that demonic tutor you get to use mana drain mana to pay for it, and then mana drain mana to play the card that you fetched. So like if you go turn 2 Wishclaw, turn 3, you wish for a mana drain, you hand it to them, and you've got 2 blue up, and then let's say they go turn 3, activate Wishclaw, play a 2-drop, and you mana drain it. Now on your turn, you have 2 mana floating. So you play your 4th land, so you've got 4 plus 1 is 6. You wish, put a Guild Lotus into play, excuse me, and you've now set yourself up in a really good position. It's turn 4, and you've got 9 mana or 7 mana into play against your opponent's 3, and you've mana drained their best 2-drop in their deck. It's kind of amazing. So that's the trap you can set up. But there's more. But wait, there's more. So the other thing you can do in Breya is you can wish for so that's a trap you can get. You can wish for a Winter Orb. So you go wish for Winter Orb and you just play Orb and then you say good luck, enjoy the talisman, right? If they're tapped out, what are they going to do? Untap 1 land, activate the wish, sit there under the orb with a card that they kind of wish they could play, right? Like the best thing they can do is go get Soul Ring, Crypt. Maybe they have 1 mana removal like Vandal Blast. But provided you're, prepped for that, it's very hard for them to do anything with it. Alternately, I suppose you could wish for Force of Will if you want to do kind of the other version of the trap, but it's not the greatest. But yeah, Winter Orb is another good target. And then you've got some really gnarly stuff. You can wish for Dak Faden and then hand them the Wishclaw tapped, right? And then Dak Faden and steal it right back. And so on the next turn, on your next turn, it's got 2 wishes left, but you get to start the turn with a Dak Faden in play. So if you're patient, you can wait. You can plus up Dak and then not use the Wishclaw. And then on the subsequent turn, you can activate Wishclaw Talisman and minus Dak and steal it right back, getting another demonic tutor, and follow that up with yet a 3rd demonic tutor. So you would get the net result from doing that is you get Dak Faden, who then steals the Wishclaw and allows you to make a 2nd demonic tutor effect, which then allows you to make, and then steals it again and allows you to make a 3rd demonic tutor. So you get triple demonic tutor. One of which has to be Dak Faden, which is awesome. And due to timing rules, you can also play Breya, have a Wishclaw out. You can activate the Wishclaw Talisman, and then with the ability on the stack, because the give it to your opponent is on the right-hand side of the column, it's not a cost, it's an effect. So you can put the effect on the stack while holding control, so you don't pass priority. And then you spend 2 mana and sacrifice the Wishclaw Talisman to do whatever you want to do with it with Breya. Gain 3 life, deal 3 damage, gain some life or whatever. The Wishclaw will then die, and then you demonic tutor for 1 mana, plus 2 to activate Breya. Pretty darn awesome. So there's a lot of things you can do. There are probably other traps you can do, other things that you can play. I'm actually not sure what else there is, except I did have a situation where the very last wish, so I used the very last wish. Sorry, I used the very last wish and gave my opponent an empty Wishclaw Talisman. And the card that I wish for? Cryptic Command. So then on my opponent's turn, they finally have a Wishclaw with no charges on it. And I just got a Cryptic. They make a normal play, so I did the trap. So this is what I did. I wished for a mana drain. My opponent wished for a card, and I drained it. I used that mana drain mana, and I think, was that the game? I think I used the mana drain mana to go get something, and I made a play off of it, right? So then, and I still have Wishclaw Talisman with 1 charge left, right? Because my opponent, I mana drained the card that they wish for. So I make my play off of it, and then with my last pumping one of the Mana Drain mana into Wishclaw, I went and got Cryptic. So then my opponent makes a play, and I counter their play, draw a card, rather than drawing a card, bounce the Wishclaw Talisman. So on the next turn, I play Wishclaw Talisman and tutored for Dack Fayden and stole it right back. So you can see how like this one Wishclaw Talisman in that game goes Wishclaw, Mana Drain your counter, bounce the Wishclaw back to my hand, steal it with Dack Fayden, and then ultimately sack it to Breya. And at this point, I have Demonic Tutored so many times, this game is completely irrevocably over. So that's like kind of living the dream. But the fact that you can do any combination of those is crazy. And don't forget, if you do the sack to Breya thing, you can brought it back too, which is kind of cool. And of course, you can always hand them the wish and go get something like Doretti, play Doretti, sack Breya token or whatever, and just kill the Wishclaw before they get an activation. So there's so many interesting things you can do, as well as lastly, you can wish for copy artifact, copy the Wishclaw Talisman, and then your setup where you can basically have some combination of what I just described. You can do it again, and being an artifact, it's so cheap. You can muddle the mixture for it. You can, like I said, fabricate Tezzeret. I can't say enough about this card. You can tap it for Urza for mana. It's just a totally insane card in this deck. So at least right now, I'm going to say 100% this card has got to stay. Finally, there's a card that every Commander deck should run, and that's probably why I can't find a foil one online. At least right now, I'll keep looking, and that's the Arcane Signet. Every Commander deck except monocolored green should run Arcane Signet. It's just a talisman that does no damage to you and taps for anything. It's an incredible card. It's a Mox Diamond that you pay mana for instead of discarding a land to. Totally amazing card and just an easy fix. And so as you can see, I end up with this final build. Man, this cough. I'm sorry. Except I'm going to take a little sip of something here and see if that helps. Except there's one other card that I mentioned that I'm trying out, and again, I believe this card will likely make the cut, but I cannot say for certain. And if it doesn't make the cut, well, that's okay. Experimentation is important, and that's this M20 card. So this M20 card. So I've had Urborg in here for a very long time. So Urborg was designed to be a kind of land-based Gilded Lotus for the express purpose of playing Necropotence. And you, for example, can go turn 1 Expedition map, turn 2 land, sack the map, go get Urborg. You're sitting there with a Tundra and a Volcanic Island. Turn 3, you play Urborg Necropotence off of a Tundra Volcanic Island, and then boom, Urborg comes down. Well, without Urborg, you can't make that play quite so fast. However, it is there is a land that I'm trying out that I think might be better than Urborg. The thing that bothered me about Urborg was a couple of things. One, it turned on my opponent's Cabal Coffers. Whenever I face a Cabal Coffer deck, I can't even play my Urborg until I've dealt with Cabal Coffers because it's too much risk. It also mana fixes the opponent whenever they're playing black. And so when I'm trying to destroy, for example, all of my opponent's black mana with Wastelands and Strip Mines, and then I'm sitting there holding an Urborg that I can't cast, it's very frustrating as well. And it doesn't produce blue. And we don't like lands that don't produce blue. Like every land in here either should produce blue or have a reason to be in here. It's got to be good enough. And Urborg did have a reason to be in here that was good enough just because Necro is that good. But it's not like, compare it to Ancient Tomb, Mishra's Workshop, and other crazy lands, or bad lands which you need just to make all your fetches capable of getting red or black when you need red or black. The Tundra and Plateau and Scrubland don't produce black, but they are blue rather, but they are plains for Tithe, and they also have the other, in conjunction with everything else, that's what makes your fetches all 100% on target for the color you need. But we only have one of each because we're really trying not to use, like, we're not using the come into play tapped lands because we don't want lands that don't produce blue, right? Well, Urborg was just that sitting in there not making blue mana, and I found a land that seems like an alternative. It's in M20. So here's the card that I'm talking about now. It's this Lotus Field. So it has hexproof, which is actually amazing. It taps for 3 mana of any color, so it is a Gilded Lotus on a land. But when it comes into play, you sacrifice 2 lands, and it comes into play tapped. So you can't do that turn I was outlining to you. If you went turn 1 Expedition map off of a, whatever land, turn 2 like off of Badlands, and then turn 2 you went Plateau, sack the Expedition map, go get Lotus Field. Turn 3, you can spend the 2 mana on something if you've got something to play, like a Signet or whatever, and then play the Lotus Field, kill the other 2 lands, and now on turn 4, so you're a turn behind on the Necro play. However, it's hexproof, and that is kind of awesome. It Because it's a land that taps for 3, it goes extremely well. It's super Winter Orb friendly, right? Like you're always gonna untap this, and there's virtually no punish that can happen with a Lotus Field Winter Orb. If there's an orb out and you play Lotus Field, you just destroy 2 tapped lands. It's incredible. It would be very nice, incidentally, to run Flagstones at Trocaire, but the idea of running Flagstones just for Lotus Field, just in case you get both, and you have enough planes in your deck to make it worthwhile when you're already trying to tithe them out of your deck, doesn't appeal to me. I think you just play Lotus Field fine. But there's a couple of things going on. So first of all, like I said, it's extremely good with Winter Orb. It still does the fixing for Necropotence. It produces blue, which is kind of important. It does make it a little harder to play Breya. If you're playing 3 different dual lands and like, let's say you have 2 different dual lands, you play Lotus Field, and then you play another land, you've now got 4 mana, but you're 2 colors off from playing Breya. So there is that. That's a drawback. But it's also a card that combos extremely well with this one. So it makes a good card better, where you can potentially go turn 3, tap 2 lands, Lotus Field, kill them, brought them back, and now on turn 4, you're at 6 mana, you've just played a Soul Ring. So, including Breya with an activation or something along those lines. So, I think there's enough of an upside that it's worth it. And it also helps when you draw something like a Cavern of Souls, and you get you have a hand where it's like Cavern of Souls, Mishra's Workshop, something that is more of a late game card, Sword of Feast and Famine, for example. Your hand is like this, and then this guy, and you go, yeah, I can keep this. Workshop into Sword, play a Cavern, can't do anything. Play a Lotus Field, still slow draw, but now at least I turn these lands that might not be doing anything for me back into lands that are doing something for me. It also works very well with Weathered Wayfarer to ensure, and Tithe, of course, to virtually assure that you're going to be able to get the advantages of these cards. And again, now a card it doesn't work well with is Vedalken Shackles. A card that it does work well with is anything that untaps land. It's totally insane with Teferi, like super, super busted. Where Teferi's untapping 4 mana at the end of your turn. I mean, that's just gross. It's, of course, Sword of Feast and Famine, kind of the same way. And it's also really good with this card, Crucible, where the drawback very shortly is non-existent. You just get the lands back that you lost. So basically what you have is a mixture, and of course it's really nutty with Treachery. So what you have here is a mixture of upsides and downsides. So as to whether or not the card, there's in a low mana count deck like this, the card could be a liability where you just cannot seem to get that second land in play. But I kind of look at it along the lines of Mox Diamond in that sense. Like, it's an extremely powerful mana fixer that requires you to have enough land for it to be good. But when it's good, it's really, really good. And with that in mind, I think that I'm going to run it, and I actually have games for you where I've been running it. I've been running it over instead of Urborg, and I really haven't missed Urborg. So that's it for this deck. There is one other card from Eldraine or whatever. There is a 2-cost red human, and he has the adventure mechanic. So for 1 red as a sorcery, you can exile the card to destroy an artifact. And then for a red and 1, you can play it from exile and put the 2/1 human into play, which does not destroy an artifact when it comes into play. You don't get to kill 2. If it killed 2, I would look at it as a potential, like a definite potential for this deck. but it does only kill one card. But as a 2-for-1 mechanic, it's pretty good. Being a human is nice, of course, because of Cavern of Souls. It's a 2-1, which is really nice for Skull Clamp. It's an interesting card. And of course, you can kill an artifact on their turn and then play it and then put equipment on it and go that way. So it's a pretty good card, but not quite amazing enough for this deck, I don't think, to make the cut, but one you ought to consider for any red deck. Anytime you're looking at your disruption options, I think that card should be, in your mind as something that you may be considering playing. So that's it for the Breya multiplayer banned list build. Those are the changes, and I've got, like I said, a lot of games that you can check out. Now I want to show you one other thing, which is the 1v1 list and what changes with that. So remember, in the 1v1 list, Winter Orb is banned, Mind Twist is banned, Strip Mine is banned, and I believe that's all the banned cards that we need to worry about. But that's some serious, there's other cards that are banned that would affect us, but we're not running them. Oh, I'm sorry. Sensei's Divining Top is also banned. So these are the 4 banned cards that are going to affect us. So we're going to replace Mind Twist, Winter Orb, Top, and Strip Mine. So let's take a look at the 1v1 list. So the 1v1 list replaces Twist with Shatter. It's a little bit worse, but what are you going to do? It's what we got, and at least you can muddle the mixture for it. I had some other stuff in there, and somebody said, why don't you just try Mind Shatter? And I did, and they were right to suggest it, so boom, we got Mind Shatter in there. I do like the fact that off of the Lotus Field, Shatter is actually a little bit easier to play since it's another land that produces double black, but of course Urborg would have served the same purpose, so it's not that big of a deal. Anyway, so we've got Mind Shatter replacing Twist. For Sensei's Divining Top, I just put a Serum Visions in. I had to pull Serum Visions from the multiplayer list because I just ran out of slots. If I could, I'd play it alongside Sensei's Divining Top, but there isn't space for it. Winter Orb is replaced by Limited Resources, which is not banned in 1v1, thankfully, because it does enough of the work that you want it. And then lastly, Strip Mine gets replaced by this pretty Mystic Sanctuary here. So this land is a card I'd really like in the multiplayer list as well. So this is a island that comes into play tapped unless it's your fourth island or more, right? So you have to have at least 3 islands in play, and then this land comes into play untapped. But it's an island, so you can fetch it with, it's not a basic island, of course. You can't get it with, like, if they Ghost Quarter you, but you can get it with your fetch lands, so you can Misty Rainforest for this thing. And the thing about it is, if it comes into play untapped, you get to take an instant or sorcery from your graveyard and put it on top of your library. So if you end of turn fetch a Mystic Sanctuary after you've got 3 islands in play, you can put a Mana Drain right on top of your deck and go, oh, look at me, I just drew Mana Drain, or Demonic Tutor, or I drew, whatever it is that you need. Oh, I needed 2 Toxic Deluges this game, or, Vandal Blast looks really tasty right now, right? So that's kind of awesome, and it's really cool, but it has some drawbacks. Of course, it has the drawback that it comes into play tapped if you don't control 3 or more islands, and with the addition of Lotus Field, I'm actually sacking lands, and sometimes they're islands. So just like the Vedalken Shackles problem, Sanctuary is a little bit worse. Also, Lotus Field's a little bit worse in this build in some ways because of the limited resources game that we're trying to play, where we want to get to 5 lands on both sides, play limited resources, and then lock the opponent out. However, on the other hand, if Lotus Field is already in play, then limited resources, if you can get up to that 5th land with a Lotus Field, you've got 7 mana off your 5 lands and they've got 5, so you're way ahead. So it's kind of, back and forth on that. Anyway, but we're talking Mystic Sanctuary here, so just keep in mind that this card actually makes these cards a bit worse, while making some other cards like Brought Back and Crucible better, like I was saying earlier. But the Mystic Sanctuary, it's really interesting. It's essentially like the fact that if you wanted to use like a Snapcaster to redraw a counter because you have a good spot, you've got to leave up Snapcaster plus a Mana Drain. You've got to leave up 4 mana. But with this thing, all you've got to do, provided you've got the 3 islands, is draw a fetch land, and you can immediately just, your fetch land is now a regrowth. It's crazy. So I think this card, I really would love to put that card in the actual multiplayer list because I really feel like it has potential. But 29 lands, there's just not enough slots there. It's in the banned strip mine slot, and clearly we're not going to play Sanctuary over strip mine. So unfortunately, Sanctuary has no Sanctuary in the multiplayer list at this time. But a really sweet card for 1v1, I think. Everything else is about the same, actually. So, yeah. And that's it. So I've got a lot of games I'll run through. You can check out how all these cards work, and we'll get started on that. But hopefully you're interested in the excitement, because it's rare that you get so many cards with play potential from a set for a format that's using cards as old and varied as this one. But lately we've been getting some real presents with the blue-red talisman, the arcane signet, like going from the number of mana drops, two drop mana rocks that we had before to 4 of them that all produce blue is just fantastic for this deck, because of course you can just go turn 2 mana rock, turn 3 Breya, and in a lot of cases get control of the board that way long enough to then focus on developing the rest of your deck. And that's not even counting stuff like, just early Jace the Mind Sculpt or Factor Fiction or whatever. So, and of course, more artifacts makes Ancient Tomb and Workshop stronger, or Soul Ring draws and Crypt draws faster. So always good stuff there. And that's it. So let's take a look at these games. Hopefully you will be entertained. So I had, I want to say, quite a few games in the last 7 days. So today I played, and everything was great. I kind of played a lot of 1v1, as you can see, and had very good results both in that and in group. And then in the last 7 days, we'll just look at starting yesterday. So the 28th is what we care about. So in the 28th, because that's when I actually got cards, all the way down, I had a loss here, and it was because I did not recognize, I'll actually show you the loss. It was because I didn't understand what my opponent was doing, and I didn't understand the danger I was in, and so I just actually handed my opponent the game, and I'll show you how that works. But all the rest have been wins, both group and individually. So let's start with that loss so you can see what I did wrong there, and then we'll just run through games. So we'll start this first one against LSM Guys on the 28th. This was yesterday. I was still testing some of these other cards and stuff, and I was tweaking like what gets cut and what goes in. So you'll have to bear with me throughout the course of these games if I have cards that no longer make the cut. For example, I think I had that Drowned card in here, for a while before I realized that there were multiple occasions where I couldn't play it and didn't want it. So we'll go ahead and run this. I'm going first, and I have a great draw. I'm playing against this commander, and I looked at the commander thinking it's a mono-red commander. I didn't even look closely at it. It is actually, because it has the 5 colors in the text, it's a 5-color commander. But my opponent's got a fast draw. I mean, this draw is a little risky, but it has so much payout. If I can draw a land and boom, I do. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to get a second blue here, which means I can't tithe, but I mean, it's for a Jace, so start Jacing. I mean, it's like, how can I possibly win this? Well, first of all, missing land drops is not helping. I mean, how can I possibly lose this? Opponent gets a Chrome Mox, Mystic Tutor, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is weird. What is this opponent playing? Okay, and then opponent plays, all right, let's stop. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, okay? So on my turn, so they've got this Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. So if they draw a card while their library is empty, they win. It mills somebody and they get to draw a card. And then the ultimate is draw 7, probably a win. So I let them draw an extra card each turn. So I was trying to decide how I want to play it. So the correct play here, I Jaced and then I found a land. So the correct play here for me could be a couple different things. I could play the Arcane Signet, right? And then just sit on 4 mana and use Tide to shuffle away what I don't want. and use Forbid to stop whatever the next play is. So that's a route I could take here. Or I could just slam Teferi and tuck this. The correct play here is probably slam Teferi and tuck the Jace because it's a card drawing engine for them. But they have a ton of mana, and if I'm worried about tapping out here, like for example, if I tap out and tuck this, what play can they make that's really devastating? Something like land Necro would be the worst thing that they could do, most likely. So that would be pretty scary, right? So I didn't want to tap out. So I decide to do this. I decide, okay, I don't want Jace there. I need to get it off the board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Arcane Signet, and then I'm going to play Breya. And so I'm going to pressure their Planeswalker. They draw a card, so what? I can attack it for 6 and kill it. Now if they want to spend their mana casting Necro, well, I can kill this thing. I'm still drawing cards off of this. I can Teferi tuck the Necro down the road. I've got pressure. Like, this gives me a board presence. However, this was completely wrong. I should have recognized the threat that I was under. That first thing on the Jace, I thought, well, that's a joke. That's like a non-existent ability. If you draw a card while your library has no cards in it, I mean, come on, how's that ever going to happen? Well, it's going to happen just like this. Tainted Pact, pause. Opponent then exiles every card in their deck, keeping nothing, pluses up Jace, draws a card, and kills me. That's how I lose. What a stupid way to lose. What a dumb card, honestly. This is a ridiculous combo. Very, very stupid. I won't be totally shocked if this shows up in like Legacy and just becomes a stupid 2-card combo, because one half of the combo is a demonic tutor for the other half of the combo, basically for whatever you need to protect it. In a deck packed with like Force of Will effects and stuff, you don't even care about cards. You don't have to fight over the board. All you have to do is play Jace. It's big enough that it's probably going to survive. You'll get an extra card right away, and then on the next turn you just win. This is going to be surely a Legacy deck. Very stupid, and yeah, I just lose. I mean, I'll spare you the here. You can see what's getting removed, right? So they're playing pure combo. I didn't recognize it off of this. I don't know why that's the commander they chose, but hey, that's cool. I'm not I'm not knocking it, and they just kill me with this stupid combo. So anyway, pretty dumb, but it stung anyway because there was no reason for me to lose. All I had to do is play. I literally had to play just Teferi, tuck their guy away, and then I was all set, right? Oh well. All right, so that was the loss. So the rest were all wins. I did not do anything quite that stupid, fortunately. So we'll start with we'll play all the 28th, I think. So in the interest of time, I think I'm going to skip ahead to the 29th. And so we'll just play the games from today because I've already been talking a lot on the video. I did want to show you that loss, though. That is a way you can lose. You just, as always, it's a matter of reading and understanding what's going on and not taking it for granted. But that's the best thing about this deck. Most of your wins are your fault. Most of your losses are your fault. So it gives you the chance to actually be a better player, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's start with Final Verb. So I'll probably do the, let's see if I can sort by format. Can I do that? Well, I can if I filter, but I don't want to go through the hassle. So I'll just do the 1v1 games. Sorry, I'll use the multiplayer list since that's the fewest number, and then we'll do the 1v1 list, and we'll run through all the rest. So we'll start with this game against Floater Joe 117, which was earlier today. I had a kid's birthday party I attended, so you can see I only played one game this evening. So we'll start with Floater Joe 117, and if I see any cards that I have since removed, I'll go ahead and point those out. And so this opponent is playing Rurik Thar the Unbowed, and this is the multiplayer list, right? So it's got Winter Orb in it, and so a 6-mana commander is going to be pretty tough for my opponent to do much with, but this game actually ends up quite a bit harder than I thought. So my opponent gets a first turn bird. I don't bolt the bird, right? That's a magic meme, and if you don't know what it is, I recommend you look it up. I think Randy Bueller talks about it in the video that I'm thinking of. But all it means is 1 mana removal on Bird of Paradise or mana producing creature like Elf is almost always, if not always, the correct play. However, I choose not to do it because I'm thinking that what I can do is I can pick off their 2-drop, whatever their second mana play is, turn 2 play is, like Cultivate or something I thought, with a mana leak, and then on my turn I can play a land and plow the bird and then lock them under the orb. So this is what I'm planning to do. So go ahead and leak the Elvish Mystic. And main deck Red Blast. Shoot. Well, that makes the Winter Orb plan a little harder. I do go ahead and get rid of the bird, though. Opponent then runs out Sylvan and a Nature's Claim. Holy smokes. These are... So, Sylvan, Claim, Red Blast. These are cards I do not want to face at all. Like, I want to face them, but I don't want them... Like, I want the challenge of dealing with them. But I want to win the exchange, and I did not win the exchange here. My opponent is way ahead. They've killed my mana source. They're going to draw multiple cards if they know what they're doing. So we'll see if his life drops to 22 or not. And my opponent's got some acceleration. So luckily I have this will though, where I can get back in the game, hopefully. But for now, I'm actually losing, and my opponent does know what they're doing. Takes 2 cards immediately off the Sylvan, finds a Crypt. Holy smokes, and now can run out their commander if they want to. Instead, runs a Cathartic Reunion into 2 blue and gets paid for it. So it has to discard 2 cards, and I can't punish them at all because I have no counter. And then my opponent gets to draw 3 cards off of that. If I could have countered it, they would have no cards in hand. Instead, they get to run out a Rexage here, destroying my Monolith, which is going to make the will plan even more difficult to execute. This is awful. So I decided I'm going to play a land, and I'm actually going to play Breya here. And the reason is that Breya gives me a possible route to pressure their life total, because they do have a Crypt running and they're paying life with Sylvan Library. It also should distract them a little bit if they're going to continue to try to kill artifacts. That's 2 main deck artifact kill spells and a Red Blast. They might Red Blast it. Instead, they play a Finhorn Elder, Sylvan Scrying for a Guy's Cradle. So I run out Will now before they can get this mana. I need to go for it, so I'm going to Will into Grim, playing a land as well for free. I play a Talisman. I go ahead and plow the creature that produces all that mana. Preordain, a Mind Twist into my hand. I have a Narset holding, and I'm going to push for damage. My opponent chooses to eat it here. So they take 6 and drop to 10, lose a Crypt Flip, and go to 7. Suddenly that Sylvan Library is not looking great here. They play Heroic Thar. They're actually going to potentially die to their own commander if they're not careful. They run out Frontier Siege, which is going to get them 2 green at the beginning of their first main and 2 green at the beginning of their second main. So this is a double Soul Ring on color, and then they play their commander. But that is not going to be enough, because that commander, for my turn, I draw Mind Twist, of course. I'm going to send in the team, and I imagine you see what's about to happen here. They're going to block Breya. I'm going to sack Breya and Grim. Well, in a minute, I'm going to sack 2 artifacts to deal 3 to them, Breya and a flyer to deal 3 more to them, and the last flyer on the board takes them to 0. So my opponent honestly should have won this game, but fortunately, that Yawgmoth's Will gave me enough value to get back into it, and Breya gave me enough pressure. And then, of course, with the lost coin flip, I was able to seal the deal. So that was a nasty game there. Anyway, in the against Floater Joe there. So then much later, I played again in the multiplayer list, and I played IVCKY. So, Ivki, and this opponent is running a Loro. So another awesome match. It should be, right? Like I love these challenging matches. They just do it for me, right? So I get first turn command tower pitch, and I decide I'm going to run out the top. I could have sat on Remand, but it's not that great here. It's not that scary here. And my opponent plays another tap land, and neither of them are blue. And I was thinking, like, man, it's a Loro. This is going to be awesome. But it looks like my opponent's a Loro deck. I'm going to just pause for a second. Just isn't quite up to muster. I mean, this shows me that it's somewhat weak. So I was thinking here, one of the things I could have done is I could have tapped the top and played the Talisman here, remand their next play, and then twist their hand away. However, what I was thinking is if I actually twist for 4 here, there's a really good chance I'm going to hit lands, and then I'll have to remand their next play. They just won't make one because they only have 6 cards. And if I take 4 of them, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to get 1 or 2 lands, and that could severely crimp their style. So I just decided I'm going to go for the twist. Now, before I have to fight over it, because if they go land and leave blue mana up, then I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, I hit 2 big drops at Ghostly Prison, and I do hit a land. My opponent's still playing lands and plays a Fountain of Renewal, which they can eventually sack to draw a card, but that's not too bad. It's actually a really interesting card. So I'll play out the Talisman that I knew was there, which allows me to also play Breya. This was the other reason, though, was that it gave me tempo. Opponent's up to 40. And now misses their land drop. Still hasn't hit blue. It looks like they didn't have any blue. I'm not sure why they kept. They could have sacked a fountain, drawn a card, and then tried to play, like find a blue source, but they just didn't want to deal with it. They give up. The twist was pretty brutal, to be fair, but it was nowhere near as bad as it could have been. And for all I know, they have reanimation effects. I don't even know. But yeah, and that finishes them off. So I'm moving to the next game. There, it looked like it was going to be a fully powered deck, and then unfortunately, disappointingly, it was not. All right, so, but no worries. Hopefully, maybe next time. All right, Turbo Bird running Rankle, Master of Pranks, and I decide I'm going to get planks. Yeah, he's taking selfies. Whatever. Anyway, has got a turn 2 Bitter Blossom, and I kept a really, really slow hand, but I kept it because it had so many answers to artifacts, and black becomes much more dangerous when it has access to artifacts. So I thought I would go this route. My opponent Grim Tutors, and I was like, please slam a Mana Crypt right here. I would love that. So I go ahead and fetch at the end of their turn. I was about to cast Mystical Tutor, and I decide the better of it, and I'm rewarded by top decking Workshop that allows me to play Shackles here, which is excellent because they get to slam their commander, but I get to steal their unsummoning Sick Fairy. My opponent then swings in, I guess, trying to figure out how to get through, and of course I just chump. I'm guessing that the thought process from my opponent is that they're costing me 2 mana per turn here, and they are, and it does kind of stink. But I really don't want Rankle to hit me. It would kind of rankle. So I'm going to go ahead and block there. Fortunately, my opponent doesn't have like removal for the Fairy Rogue. Here they run out Cabal Coffers, Liliana's Crest, Skull Clamp. Oh, nasty. Skull Clamp and Bitter Blossom is gross. I'm going to go ahead and Mystical Tutor, though, at the end of their turn. Even though I really want mana here, actually, I'm going to tutor for Tithes so that I can get it. So we'll grab a couple lands. Of course, I'm going to get blue sources for those Shackles. Play it tap because I have only one play I can do here, and that play is to steal that rogue before he equips it with Skull Clamp. And my opponent realizing this, oops, I don't know what's in his hand. And if you want to look at his commander, it's really interesting. If he hits me in combat damage, he can make each of us discard, or each of us draw, or each of us kill one of our creatures. So as a combo with Bitter Blossom, you can continuously force the sack on a creature. Against most opponents, that would be pretty darn good. And of course, if he uses the discard effect with the Caress, he's going to do extra damage, quite a bit of extra damage. But at the end of the day, I think my opponent had no answer for really Shackles, and if they try to move the Clamp, I steal the Fairy Rogue, and then the Clamp does not. It fizzles because it's an invalid target. You can't equip your opponent's creatures. And then, of course, if he tries to swing in, I get to chump. It won't kill the Rankle, so then I just continuously block. But on the next turn, if my opponent didn't disrupt me here, I get to go land, Treachery, steal their commander, untap all of my lands, cast Dak Fade, and steal their Skull Clamp, pass with 2 mana up, and then on their turn, steal their Fairy Rogue, and then start clamping the Fairy Rogue. And so now my opponent's paying 1 life to make me draw 2 cards per turn. I don't even have to Teferi it down. Pretty nuts, right? So fortunately, yeah, my opponent just had enough. But that could have gone very, very poorly. Like, my opponent had a great start, just like the other, the red-green player did earlier. But a great start doesn't always get you there against this deck. All right, so Psycho Rory here is playing the first Sliver. And I have a pretty insane draw. I'm going to go ahead and just land pass. Opponent plays a Citadel and passes. They've got a slow draw. Yeah, mine's nutty. I'm going to go ahead and run out a second Steam Vents. Unfortunately, my fetch lands didn't really work out in a way that I would be able to get Necro easily. Opponent plays Winged Sliver. I'm certainly not going to mana drain that. I could have gone land, Thran, Dynamo off a Crypt, but I decided that I figured they were playing Slivers since this gives Slivers Cascade, and that because I have the Toxic Deluge, I thought about draining this, and then I also decided not to. I'm actually going to let them, I'm going to pay life to get advantage on board. So I run this out now. I can run out Breya, and I've got Crypt, and I'm thinking about how I want to pursue this. So I decide I'm just going to sit here in case they play anything that gets too insane. What I'm trying to do, what I was hoping they would do on this turn, was play their commander, but they're not able to. Unfortunately, they do play a Shadow Sliver. So at this point, what I could do, I'm going to pause, is I could sack, like, say, the Thopter and the Crypt, or 2 Thopters, kill the Shadow Sliver, but then I can't block this because it also has flying. So there's Shadow and flying. So if I sack Breya and like Crypt, I could kill the Shadow Sliver, and then with these two, I could block this and kill it. But the thing is, I'd have to lose like Crypt or Clamp, which I don't want to do. And these Sopters represent 4 cards. So am I going to give up 4 cards to kill a crappy 2/2 that happens to be pumping his creatures up, but doesn't matter with a Deluge in hand? No, I'm not. So I just let it all go. And still hoping to mana drain into Thran Dynamo at some point. Oh, well, I draw a Lotus, and at this point, that's just too much mana for me to pass up. So I'm going to run out Thran, and I'm going to run out Lotus, and send in my team, because I can't block. And I figure I can go ahead and clamp here, and then just take a hit one more time. So I'm just going to sit back, let my opponent smash face. I'm hoping that this is the turn that they play their commander. I have enough life here where it's going to be fine. And I want to sweep the board, and then I'll use Necro to refill my hand. But they run out Wake. Unfortunately, I have to interact with the Wake. So I mana drain the Wake, which means I have another mana crypt flip facing me. Find a Vampiric Tutor with that Ponder in my hand. That's extremely good. So I go ahead and clamp into it also, finding a Tezzeret, which I can now use to generate obscene amounts of mana. I go ahead and Ponder into... it should be Wishclaw Talisman, or did we break? Yeah. So I go ahead and Ponder there, and then I sack Breya and the Mana Crypt to gain 5 life, and I go ahead and Deluge the board off, I believe. Yeah, I Deluge the board off, and yeah, I had the... yeah, there was a Wishclaw. There was a Wishclaw, right? I pondered into Wishclaw. So what happened is Wishclaw pops into my hand. So I play Wishclaw, active, didn't have enough black mana. That's right. I can't play Wishclaw this turn. Can I? Oh, no. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. I tap Thran Dynamo for 3. I Tezzeret plus, and I untap Thran and Lotus. Wishclaw is in my hand, right? Now I've got a... I tapped the Tezzeret for, or the Lotus for triple black. So I've got a ton of black mana. I play the Wishclaw. I use the Wishclaw, and in response, I sack Wishclaw, I think, and Talisman, and Crypt, something like that. And I gain some life, and I get a swing in there somewhere, and I deluge the board away. The card I wished for off Wishclaw was Winter Orb, and I play Winter Orb here. And then my opponent just concedes. At that point, I've got Tezzeret on 5, Lotus, Thran, a Clamp, a bunch of lands, a Winter Orb. My opponent's down to just what you see here. I strip mine their untapped land, also whatever land they untap, and it's super, super over. Had they continued, of course, Tezzeret then just fetches Crucible, and I strip them again, and then cast Necro and draw a bunch of cards. So totally over, but it was an interesting sequencing. I thought was a little bit interesting on that one. So now I've got this game against Sir Core. I might just do the 1v1 in a separate video. I don't know how long I want to make this thing. I kind of want to get it up there. Yeah, I might just do that. Anyway, Sir Conrad the Grim, which is rewards him for killing creatures, and has a millstone effect on it that seems a little bit out of place. Anyway, I get an early start. My opponent plays Spectre's Shriek and takes a non-black, exiles a non-black card, exiles my Winter Orb. And because he exiles a non-black card, he has to exile a card from his hand. So 2 for 1s himself. Does kill a Winter Orb, which is very important in mono black, but is down to only 4 cards in hand now. Because they had to exile one of their own cards in order to exile, they lost a Shriek and the card they exiled. It's not very good. Anyway, I have Strip Mine, but I'm waiting just in case a better land shows up. I've got time, or if my opponent misses a drop, which they did. Oh, excuse me. So I go ahead and Sensei's Divining Top, and then I decide I've got Forbid, so I'm just going to play a land. I will Strip Mine them. They did not. They played the land, but they didn't make a play. So see, if I'd Strip Mine my opponent here, so my opponent played the 3rd land, and I played my 3rd land. If I had played Strip Mine here and killed it, then when they made this 2-drop, I cannot deal with it, right? I have no answers. It's going to be a few turns. But by playing my 3rd land and just sitting on Forbid, since they had no play anyway, when they make this 2-drop play, which they clearly top-decked, I just counter that, and I can get around to Forbidding in a moment. or I can play, stripping in a moment, or I can play a land and sit on Cryptic, which is what I would have done. And then if my opponent makes no play, then I strip mine him, and I'm ready to go on a Cryptic command. And most likely at that point, I'd just play Breya and then follow it up by Cryptic. So pretty much, I think this was the better sequence. So weirdly enough, a lot of times when you have strip mine, the temptation is to just immediately kill a land. It isn't always correct. If you are killing a land and you have a counter up or some removal or like something you're going to do like proactively with the time that you bought with the strip mine for like kill a man, play a signet, something like that, kill a land, play a signet, then the strip mine is correct. But if it takes you off of a counter and the only thing you can do is counter, then it's totally incorrect because you just took your shields down in order to disrupt them and hope that they don't top deck a play that you have to counter. It's not good in a format as powerful as this, and generally it's not good at all, frankly. So just keep that in mind when you're using your strip mine sequencing. So that was Sir Core. And then I got this game against Rock Roy here. And this game, excuse me, I get to Wishclaw, I believe. My opponent's playing, all right, so I get a Sigarda, and I get a first turn Weathered Wayfarer, but I don't have a Force of Will to play with it. I do top deck a second land, so I'm going to play the Talisman because not playing a Talisman here slows me down enough that it's not worthwhile. Because if my opponent does kill my Withered Wayfarer with a Plow and then play a land, I won't get to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and I do this, and I'm just sitting on, I top deck a Dark Confidant. So I'm just sitting on Withered Wayfarer activation and not using the Wishclaw. But I'm not super worried about it. Opponent plays like a minor threat and a Lifecrafter's Bestiary, which will get him card advantage down the road, but doesn't get it right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and just leave that alone. I tutor up an Ancient Tomb. I tutor again and go get a Workshop. Play the Workshop into Feast and Famine on the Confidant. Smash. Excuse me. I had a line of play in mind. I then Wishclaw into, bang, Winter Orb. Play the Orb. Play Winter Orb. I've got Force of Will up, and look, this game is completely over. Here, you get a Wishclaw Talisman, bud. You can wish for a card that you probably can't play and it's going to get countered even if you can. He's got this thing that's supposed to get him card advantage, but it costs mana to do it under the Orb. And I have a Sword of Feast and Famine running under a Dark Confidant with a Jitte, which means I'm not going to lose life and die off the Confidant. The average casting cost of this deck is about 2.3, so about 2.25, 2.5 mana per card, so typically per flip. And so that's average casting cost, and I don't think that takes into account land, so it should push it down lower. But even if it does, the point is maximum I'm going to take on average over the course of time is 2 damage per turn, 2.25, maybe, so like 5 damage over the course of 2 turns. Jitte gives you 8 life over the course of 2 turns, so I'm going to be ahead forever. You can't die if you have a Confidant with a Jitte with this deck unless you've done something terribly wrong. So I have a Winter Orb that totally doesn't affect me at all and a Confidant that doesn't affect me at all. And, well, in a minute, I can go get a Strip Mine too. Well, before I do that, my opponent gives up. Like, there's not even a card that they can wish for that's worth trying to get out of this situation for them. So if they had, like, say, Nature's Claim and they had a land, they go land, wish, Nature's Claim. And of course, let's say I didn't have Force of Will and they killed Winter Orb. Sure, fine, but that still doesn't deal with these threats right here. These 3 right here are already brutal. And then I'm going to start wastelanding and strip mining them on top of things. It's just not going to happen, right? Plus I could even like fetch up a land for my commander, play my commander, do something like that. Like, it's just gross and it's over. My opponent realizes that and they scoop. But you can see like how insane Wishclaw is because I gave my opponent a Demonic Tutor and it does not even slightly matter, right? Because my Demonic Tutor beats their Demonic Tutor. And after they tutor, let's say they did tutor up removal and they went land Orb, I get the Wishclaw back. So on my turn, I tutor for, I could go Ancient Tomb, right? Tutor for Yawgmoth's Will, play Yawgmoth's Will, smash, get all my mana back, replay my Winter Orb from the graveyard. Well, actually, just replay the Winter Orb from the graveyard right there. Smash, get all my land back, and the Wishclaw will have, fed me everything I need. In fact, if I wanted, I could remove the last counter and go get a Will and not play it immediately. Play what I could do is I could wait. I could play Breya, right? And then I could do this thing where I do activate Wishclaw, sack it in response. It dies, go get the will, and then on the next turn play the will, recast the Wishclaw and the Winter Orb, and have yet another round of tutors. Like, just abusive, gross card, and I love it. And it's not, it's an abusive, gross card that is not a give me. Like, it is a skill testing card. It isn't just a demonic tutor or multiple demonic tutors. It's a tutor with a drawback that you have to be cognizant of. And so it means, like I said, a skill tester card. It means, like, if you've got the deck and you've got the skill, then you've got the card you want. You're going to be all set. But there's enough risk there that, you don't feel like this is just so absurdly powerful that I feel kind of dirty using it, right? It's just fun. You just feel like, oh man, I managed to make this Wishclaw, kick butt for me this game, and I'm happy about that. And those are fun games. I love cards like that. So yeah, I think I'm going to just do that. I'll run through maybe just a 1v1. I'll do the one win I did tonight in 1v1. It's really not that much different from the deck in general, but you can see a slight difference here. See, I've got Mystic Sanctuary. This is my opponent's playing a Galta Primal Hunger. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to pause. What I'm going to hope to do, what I will do is deploy the Sanctuary if I need to deploy the Sanctuary. And it's a little bit, I've got so much mana that I don't think I necessarily have to. I don't have to go turn 1 Sanctuary, get nothing out of it, and then it comes into play tap, and then turn 2 I've got Mana Drain up. I can actually go Foothills Flats, and I've got Drain up. And if I can get a third land, so I just need a third island, as long as I fetch islands with these, then what that gives me is the ability down the road to play Mystic Sanctuary untapped and put a Mana Drain on top of my deck. And one Mana Drain typically wins a game. 2 Mana Drains is gross, right? So I'm hoping I don't have to drain here, but I can. My opponent goes for Cultivate. I have limited resources in my hand. I'm not going to counter the Cultivate. I'm still trying to figure out which color I want to go get here, so I'm waiting on my Marsh Flats. Still hoping to get, I'm going to go ahead and pause, still hoping to get that third island, in this case, I'd like a Tundra. So my opponent runs out a 4-drop that has some pretty good upside for them, and I decide that I am going to Mana Drain there. I didn't really like to because Duretti would have killed it, and you don't want to, excuse me, you don't want to counter something that you can kill, generally speaking. However, it's a Mana Drain card, and I've got a lot of colorless things that I can pump it into with the Fabricate, Spellseeker, and even the 1 mana on Duretti. So not allowing my opponent to have pressure and development now means that I can accelerate. And my opponent's already up to 5 mana, so real soon I'm going to want to get white mana, and Fabricate using my opponent's mana will allow me to do that. So I'm going to Fabricate here, and I get Crucible, which allows me to play the, I'm going to pause. It allows me to replay the flats. So now I've got my Tundra, which gives me this is 4 lands. It gives me my limited resources mana, and it also gives me my third island for Sanctuary. And it sets me up real nice where I can set up for limited resources, like with additional lands, right? Because I need to get 5 lands into play. So that guarantees my 4th and 5th land drop. So now, I tutor up Counterspell with this. So what I'm expecting to happen is my opponent makes a play. I'm going to counter it. And then on my turn, I'm going to not use the Crucible for the turn. I'm going to play Mystic Sanctuary and recur the Mana Drain, then play limited resources Duretti, is what I'm expecting to happen. However, in the face of my counterspell, my opponent just gives up. So, sounds good. But that was going to be pretty savage and pretty gross right there. And I was real excited about how that was going to play out. I was so excited. I was like, definitely going to Mystic Sanctuary. I thought the Mana Drain, I mean, it could have been Fabricate too, honestly, at that point. But, yeah. So, cool game. And that's it. You got to see, I did that last game specifically so you could see how Mystic, how that land potentially could be valuable in a game of Magic, right? And so you can decide. Unfortunately, I didn't have any games there where Lotus Field came up, but I did have a bunch in the 1v1. So if I do decide to do a video with those, then I've got some games for you. But if I do that, it'll probably be later on during the week, just so that I can because I generally don't have a lot of playtime during the week, and that'll give me something that I can use hopefully to provide some entertainment later when I have time to upload but not time to do actual play the games in order to generate the content that way. So again, this is the full powered multiplayer Breya deck list, which I really wish I had. The one card I wish I had right here is Serum Visions. And then the one land I wish I had for sure is the that Mystic land that I just demonstrated. Um, Man, I wish I could fit those two cards in here, but I mean, I can't. And then the other thing, of course, was the multiplayer list you saw, which does have the Sanctuary in the Strip Mine slot and looks like this. Of course, has Serum Visions in the Senses Divining top slot. A very odd ban in 1v1. It's probably one that they probably should relook at and take off the ban list. I don't know what they're. I understand what they were thinking, but like Sensitive Divining Top is going to grind more time out of a multiplayer game than it's going to grind out of a 1v1 game. So I think they've got it exactly backwards. Like if you're going to ban it Sensitive Divining Top anywhere, I think it would be multiplayer, not 1v1. Because in multiplayer you're taking three opponents' time by using the top. In 1v1, you're only taking one. Of course, all they have to do is right-click and always yield. It's not that big of a deal, but for whatever reason, they've got it reversed, so who knows. Anyway, so that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and you're as excited about these new cards as I am, because they're really fun to play and very cool. And that's all I've got for now. But thank you very much for watching. This video is long enough. And I look forward to your comments and thoughts on these cards as well as some of the others I brought up or anything else you've seen from either M20 that I missed or from ELD, Throne of Eldraine that I may have missed because I'm certainly interested in, and we're always got to play with the tech. You're always going to tune those slots. We're trying to get as watertight as possible basically on our blue deck. So thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next time.